The Teach Like a Champion technique, Stretch It, is about pushing students to think deeper and master the content on a higher level. For example, let's say a teacher asks the class to play an arpeggio for a B-flat dominant 7th chord. A common response from a teacher might be, "Great," and then they move on with class. In the Stretch It technique, teachers spend a little bit more time pushing students to gain a deeper understanding of the content or to obtain a higher performance proficiency. One way to implement this technique is to ask questions that help challenge the student's music theory knowledge. Let's go back to the previous example of a band playing the arpeggio correctly. Instead of just saying "great" and moving on, the teacher can say this instead to stretch the student's understanding of the content. "Great! Now, Maria, which chord tone is D in the arpeggio?" The third. "Right. Nick, what chord tone is the A flat?" The 7th. "Correct. Now, let's move on." In this example, the teacher stretches the students to think about the theory behind the passage they are playing. These extra questions did not take a lot of time, but did a lot in pushing the students to understand the content a little more deeply. In music, we can also push the students to obtain a higher proficiency on a passage they have already played correctly. Here are some ways to stretch the students' proficiency on a performance objective. Have them play the passage at a different tempo. One of the true tests of mastering a performance objective is playing it at different tempos. Increasing the tempo helps facilitate better technical proficiency, and when bringing it back to the normal tempo, it will be much easier to play. Slowing down the tempo can challenge students to make sure they are really internalizing and counting the rhythms in a passage. It can also help the students listen to intonation and balance. Once you return it to the original tempo, you will most likely see the band's level of playing increase. See if they can play the passage multiple times in a row correctly. Another test of true mastery of a performance objective is being able to play it multiple times in a row correctly. If students play something correctly once, challenge them to play it correctly multiple times in a row. "That arpeggio was great. Let's play it that well 5 times in a row." Practice makes perfect. This is very cliche, but also very true, especially in music. The more times someone is able to play something correct consecutively, the higher the level of proficiency on that performance objective, and more likely the musician will play it correctly at the performance. A lot of professional musicians will practice something until they can play it flawlessly at least 10 times in a row. Include more challenging technical elements to the passage. This also helps stretch a student's technical understanding of a passage, but will vary greatly on the setting of the ensemble. Here are some ideas of technical elements to add. Playing in a higher or lower octave. Adding a turn, grace note, or some other form of embellishment. Adding chord substitutions, extensions, to a chord progression. Make note that if you add a more challenging element to a passage in a piece, be sure it sounds good and fits with the context of the piece. For example, having a lead trumpet player play a note an octave higher in the middle of a ballad might not fit. However, having them play an octave higher at the end of a high-energy tune would be more appropriate. It is also important to make sure that you are not including so many stretch-it moments in rehearsal that it starts to take away from the flow of that rehearsal. The teacher should use personal judgment when determining the right number of stretches to include in a rehearsal. Always make sure that you are being selective with using stretch-it techniques. When you are thinking of using Stretch It, make sure it is going to deepen the student's understanding or raise the proficiency of an important performance objective. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you are interested in learning more, we have a PDF attached below with some teacher prompts to use when implementing Stretch It.